Here you go.
Welcome, everybody. Today is the first meeting of the regular school year. It's the 13th of September, and this is the September regular meeting of the Willington Board of Education, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. So we're going to get started today with, let me make sure I'm looking at the correct agenda, because I think I closed the one up already, and I did. Give me a second here. There it is. So we start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Board of Ed starts and finishes its meetings with time for the public to speak back to us, and we include that under present to speak. We ask that you keep your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes and start with your name and your address for the record. The best ways for us to see you is for you to either raise your hand on the screen or use the reactions button to raise your hand as you see that Nicholas Tella and Arthur Christensen have. It pops you to the front so we can see you on the screen, and that makes it a lot easier. So we will start with Mr. Tella.
Good evening, Nicholas Tella, 49 Myrtle. I want to start off with, and maybe getting confused with the SBC, but I thought you guys were going to be switching to a hybrid starting in September. I'm not sure if anybody is in a location where the public could show up, but I was under the impression that you guys were going to do that. So there's that. The curriculum, I was trying to see if that was sent over to the library. I ran into the secretary at town hall. She said that it was going to be sent over there. Wasn't sure if that officially got sent over. And the last item I have is kind of interesting. So it started off as something going on nationally. And somebody said, oh, it's made up, blah, 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 blah. Talked to a teacher. He was like, listen, it's made up. Kids using litter boxes. It was something made up throughout the country. And then my buddy that's a teacher said, it's not happening. He eventually talked to a state trooper that was in charge of investigating a situation in Rhode Island. And he confirmed that at Cranston West, it was happening. So the reason I bring it up is I'm not sure if this has been something that even discussed about, if the school system will allow kids that identify as cats. And this is crazy, I'm even talking about this. If they're going to be using litter boxes in private rooms or something in Willington. I don't know of any cases in Willington. I do know that there's a parent in Southington that said it is happening in that school system. So just something on the radar. It's also happening in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. It's been confirmed through parents and such. So just want to put it on the radar, and that's it. Thanks.
Mr. Christensen, I see your hand and recognize you next. If you would start with your name and address, please.
Good evening, Arthur Christensen, 14 Birch Meadow Lane. I just wanted to express my concerns about the aftercare program on the professional development days. The email that I and other parents received states that there will be aftercare available for 40 kids per school on the professional development half days. This is just over 20%, if I remember correctly from student enrollment. It's just under 400. So it's just under 20%, or excuse me, just over 20% of the town's student body. And I'm wondering what method was used to determine this number, because I feel that it's a very small number. But my main concern about this is that you're charging parents $60 for the year to use this service. And I feel this is incredibly unfair. Parents are inconvenienced by these half days because these schools chose to give the teachers half days for professional development. The school should be providing this aftercare for free and covering the total cost of this service. At the current numbers you're offering and the price that you're offering, the cost for the service is only $4,800. I recall a Board of Ed Policy Committee meeting from 3/3/2022 in which a change was proposed to give the Board of Ed power to vote to distribute up to $20,000 and $20,000 not needing town vote from the non-lapsing account for, quote, educational purposes, which may include non-recurring or unanticipated expenditures, end quote. Well, it's not end quote, but it is end quote in this case. It sounds like aftercare in this case is an unanticipated expenditure, and this would be the perfect thing for the Board of Ed to vote on. Now, I did notice that aftercare is part of the superintendent's report in this meeting, and I'm hoping that Phil will be bringing this cost for the Board of Ed to approve and provide some much needed relief for the parents in town. Thank you.
Are there others present on the meeting who would like to speak? You can either raise your hand using the reactions button or come on the screen by turning on your video and waving at us with your physical hand. And if we see you, we can recognize you to speak. And if you choose not to, there's always opportunity at the end of the meeting, since we do this at the start and the end. Phil, I don't see anyone. Am I missing anyone?
No, I don't see anyone either.
Okay, so we're just starting with the chairman's report. And because we have so many things on the agenda for today, I am going to forego that privilege and we will just jump immediately into communications.
I did not receive any.
Okay, start of the school year. Let's see if we can keep things rolling here. Presentation on Rosetta Stone for our world language needs.
Yep. So I asked Mary Kay Shaughnessy, who's the HMS principal, to come and speak tonight. She's going to go over kind of our history and where we are and why we're presenting what we're presenting tonight. But just the bottom line for us, trying to find someone to teach world language is like a needle in a haystack. We are not the only district. And so part of our jobs is to be creative. You're going to hear that word a couple times tonight. This is one area that you're going to hear that in. So I'm going to pass it to Mary Kay so she can do a presentation for you on Rosetta Stone as a language program. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see the presentation.
Thank you, Phil. I just wanted to thank the Board of Education for allowing me to come this evening to talk to you about our world language program. Just to give you a little bit of a background, high schools require at least one credit of a language for students to graduate. That has changed since a couple of years back. It used to be 2 credits and it used to be consecutive languages. Now it is 1 credit, and 1 credit equals 2 semesters worth of work. And it usually is in the same language so that students can build some sort of foundation. Obviously, we know, as many of us are educators and many of us have heard about the benefits of having foreign language instruction. It's been shown to increase problem-solving skills, to expand the brain in many different ways, including verbally and spatially. It can enhance memory function, especially when it comes to vocabulary. It can increase flexible and creative thinking. Because of our students are going to be faced with a global society and having to deal with people of all cultures and backgrounds, no matter what their work is, it better prepares them for that opportunity. It increases their reading achievement in their native language, and it expands their vocabulary in English, because many of the roots that are from, especially Romance languages and Latin, are part of our vocabulary. And it does increase academic performance in college and adulthood. Most usually, it sets students up on an academic track if they take languages to continue to take those languages, and it moves them ahead at a very different rate. We have had a struggle in Willington and actually across the state in filling the vacancy for world language. In Connecticut alone, this past summer, there were 90 vacancies in the world language area, which is immense considering there's 169 actual towns in Connecticut. Some departments are doubling up teachers, paying teachers extra. One of my friends is a Spanish teacher in Bolton. She is now a 1.15 teacher because she's taking on the load not filled by somebody who, not filling a vacancy. We have had an unfilled Spanish position initially from March of 2020 to November of 2020. We found a highly qualified teacher, and then she resigned in April 2020 to go to the college level, and she's an academic advisor for students who speak Spanish as a native language. The application pool is extremely small. Every single person who has applied, we have reached out to. There was just a funny aside, there was a teacher that I had set up for a sample lesson, very gung-ho, got everyone set, and she never showed up. So we have this occurring across the state. Students who take middle school world language are eligible to take level 2 in high school. They don't have to if they don't feel comfortable, but level 2 is where they probably would go if they were proficient and recommended from level 1. And right now, Spanish is the only language that we offer. And while Spanish is incredibly valuable, there are other languages that are valuable as well and that are offered at other high schools, not, including but not eliminating. There's Latin, German, French, Italian, Mandarin, Russian. These are languages that many students may pursue if they choose. So after we had an absolute, desert of applications, we have Spanish in our schedule. And I specifically built the schedule so students in grades 7 and 8 could achieve mastery in a language. I looked at a number of different programs that we could access via a computer or somewhat of a hybrid model. The first platform I looked at was the Language Learning Network. This is a network that hires native speakers and employs them on their own. These people the people who work for them are not necessarily certified teachers, but they're native speakers. They would provide instruction to students virtually. What that means is it would be like the head on the screen, and they would be teaching the students, and then we would have a paraprofessional and instructional assistant, some sort of oversight in the room when those students are learning. Only one language is offered, and it would have been Herculean to take on our schedule because our schedule is so changeable. The assessing and grade reporting needs to be done by a Willington Public School employee, and in order to do any grading, you have to be a certified teacher, and we don't have a certified teacher to put in that position. The references that I collected and called included very, very small private schools located in New Jersey, Delaware, and places not Connecticut. Connecticut has pretty stringent guidelines around the programs that they will allow students to partake in. And the cost was far exceeded what it was $50,000 at least for the one-year contract, and that does not include the personnel that is needed to oversee the classroom. So with that research being done, my next option was Rosetta Stone, which many of you may have already heard of. It is used by individuals on the individual platform to learn a foreign language. It has recently gone into the educational realm where it offers K-12 instructional lessons and instructional teaching. They offer 25 different languages, and that's a very, very large number. And I don't know if Phil and I discussed it, and we would probably limit the in-class or in-school options to 5 or 6 so that it could be managed and so the student could then use it when they got to high school. We would definitely be in contact with the high schools to see which languages they offer so that we are not having students take a language that they cannot continue in. However, what they take in middle school does not necessarily mean they have to follow in those same footsteps in high school. Thus far, the program adheres to all of the student privacy guidelines because they are owned by a larger company that does student learning, which we'll get to in the next slide. They offer comprehensive training to any and all users of the platform as part of the cost. There is a self-help library where teachers or instructional assistants or students can even go on if they need any additional learning. Students would be accessing the platform individually. However, there are opportunities for group work and activities and worksheets. They would be moving at their own individual pace, and they offer 5 different levels of learning. Students will be using a headset while interfacing with the program. However, they will not be on the computer the whole time, as we know that they need some, in-person and hands-on kind of learning around different themes. And that would be what the teacher would be, what the IA would be doing in the room. The platform can be accessed from home, so parents can work with their students. And if students need reinforcement or enrichment or would like to explore something else, they can do that. As I mentioned, it would require oversight, just like the Language Learning Network. However, it would be actual teaching or actual interaction with the student, and it's not just watching a student watch a screen. The program offers live support at all times. So say there's something, the student gets stuck, there is a live person on the other end. The support resources, as I mentioned, do offer hands-on worksheets, activities, projects, and the thing that makes Rosetta Stone stand apart, at least for me and my research and from the people I talked to at the various schools, was it allows students the opportunity for those basic language lessons like grammar and vocabulary, writing and reading. But the biggest piece for Rosetta Stone was the speaking portion, because they speak and that they have an instantaneous reaction or instantaneous feedback from the other end of the microphone. Okay. To continue, as we know, because we've heard about it from any of our friends who go abroad, and my daughter used it when she had a really wonky year in Spanish and she needed to bone up on her Spanish before she went to high school. We used it personally. This is a different program because it's K-12. It was recently acquired by IXL, which is a very well-known educational platform that does pacing and grading and progress report monitoring all within the program, so that the person who is on the other end at our building is not responsible for assessing anything. It would mainly be data input of what a student achieved on the platform itself. Students are very well prepared for high school languages. The high schools I spoke to said that the students did achieve significant gains while using this platform. And of course, the gains are equal to the effort put in. So the hope is that the students would approach this in a way that's really positive. And we've had a fantastic start to the school year, so I cannot see why that wouldn't happen. We have they offer 5 levels of the language, which can go all the way up to the 5th or 6th year of high school of what they would need to get into for college level Spanish. They also offer ELL opportunities, so that if a student is struggling with the English language, they can also access that. The 12-month subscription for the training, the website, the teaching, and all of the activities, not including our salary that we would pay our instructional assistant in the room, is $10,995. This is for a 1 year, 12 months, which I felt, and Phil and I discussed it, would be a good way for us to see whether it would be something that we wanted to continue. This is for an entire building license, so it's not individually seats. We don't have to register seats. It offers seats up to 200 people because that's the size of our building. The references that I received, that I reached out to, included Connecticut schools. Some of them are urban, but some of them are also a little bit less. We had Rocky Hill and Rockville. We had Booker T. Washington, and most recently, the Hartford Public Schools has used Rosetta Stone in the same manner. So Phil, I don't know if you want me to finish. Okay, great. So, my gut as an educator and as somebody who works in a school with kids, my recommendation would be that the board move to utilize Rosetta Stone for this school year, 22-23 school year, for world language instruction. And just to give you a little bit further background, we currently have an instructional assistant in that classroom. She's working with the students in the world language subjects, and she will be able to transition to this level of instruction. She's also a native Spanish speaker, so she has that bilingual edge to her, and she's phenomenal. Currently, the students right now prior to us launching this program, we want to be sure that students make a thoughtful decision as to which languages they want to take. And if we're offering 5 or 6 for a middle school student, that's a lot of choices. So what we did was we put together a presentation where students would be conducting research around the language that they thought would be the one that they would choose. And they were going to be presenting persuasive slideshows that include their reasons. Students will stay in the language for at least 1 quarter. So it's not going to be like a candy store where you pick one and then the next day you pick the other. We want to see some sort of continuity. And we'll encourage them to remain in one language. However, they will have the option, if it's just not working, to switch. And as I mentioned earlier, I built the schedule so that 7th and 8th grade students have that opportunity to take 2 Spanish classes a week, because we have found that due to the fact that we haven't had continual instruction, or at least some blips on the radar, they need to be prepared for high school when they get to languages for the high school level.
So through our conversations, MK and I have talked about this quite a bit. One thing that we talked about was keeping our posting open, the job open for the Spanish position. And that if we did have to backpedal, that we would have an out to do that. That would be my suggestion. And I would do that by quarter. We talked about the potential for students would only be able to change their languages by quarter if they wanted to change. And so if we were going to totally end this and only use it for our Spanish program, if we found a highly qualified candidate, that we could make that adjustment quickly. Odds of finding that person, just based upon the history here and looking at the openings in other towns, is slim. And so this is a creative approach to try and provide some world language, and just thinking about cost. So obviously we have the budgeted for a full 1.0 classroom teacher for our Spanish program at Hall. And just between the cost of the program, the paraeducator, the benefits, supplies, you would need to purchase headphones. You're probably looking at around $60,000 to do this type of program for a year. And that would fully be covered by the salary that we have budgeted now. Is it the best case scenario? No, I don't think it is. I think having a teacher in front of kids is always best. The fact that we have a Spanish speaker already there that's willing to do this is great. The fact that we could offer some additional languages where we would not be able to do that otherwise is great. But it is a student interacting with a computer and the headset. So that's kind of my only 2 cents. I put a motion up there for you if you want to consider it. I'm sure you have some questions for MK and myself as well.
If you could stop sharing the screen so we can see each other's there we go. Laura?
So I've got a couple questions. One, I'm wondering what the instructional assistant is doing with the students right now. And then the second one is I'm wondering about your reasoning to offer the students multiple languages rather than keep this just as Spanish, since the IA is a Spanish speaker and you're keeping the post open. So you may need to transition to a teacher in the classroom who would be a Spanish teacher. So it sounds like, I love the idea of different languages, but I'm thinking this is a brand new, creative solution. I agree it's not ideal, but I commend you for this creative approach. I'm just thinking that letting students choose multiple languages could create a lot of different issues starting this new program. And you also, like, if students are doing different languages that are not Spanish, the IA cannot help them as much and they can't talk with each other. So you're creating a community if they're all learning one language and they can practice with each other. So it just seems like maybe simplifying it might be better.
Can I answer?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I think that is a very good point. The options for languages really came from what high schools offer. Because there are some high schools that offer French and German and Spanish. I do agree that Spanish, having every student take Spanish would certainly be simpler. And we could definitely do that. Once, when we figure out how when we actually are trained on the program. I also love, as a person myself who took Latin through high school, I love the idea of Latin because, as we know, as science teachers, it's the basis of all real vocabulary.
Spanish.
I agree.
Sorry.
I agree. And I took 5 years of Spanish, so I'm a language girl.
Me too.
So quite frankly, you do make a very good point, and it's not something that we would definitely look at that. I don't want to offer so many languages because then we'd have all this pandemonium, and middle schoolers, sometimes having a decision made is not necessarily a bad thing. We really didn't think about going in that direction, but it's a great suggestion.
Anne, you'll have to come off mute.
I was wondering, so children could be taking different languages in one class, right? Depending on what they're plugged into on their computer. What if we were to consider 5th and 6th graders maybe staying with Spanish and then offering the other languages when they get to 7th and 8th, and also have languages twice a week?
Yep. We already have the 7th and 8th grade language twice a week. So Spanish already had 7th and 8th graders already have that. That's a great suggestion. And I did not answer one of Laura's questions, and I want to address it. She asked what the instructional assistant was doing now. The instructional assistant is doing little exploratory lessons on different languages and their uses and where they would be beneficial, which careers, and students are putting together like a persuasive kind of slideshow around what their choice would be if they had the choice.
Thanks, Mary Kay. Herb, I saw your hand up a moment ago. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. What were they? The testing part of this, is there any opportunity for testing of students in this particular environment?
Yes, students would be assessed in a variety of different ways. We know that not every student does test taking well, so they do offer a variety of different ways to assess student progress, and that progress is monitored right on the platform. And then the instructional assistant would go and, mine that data to use for reporting out to parents.
Right, and I just want to add to that we would not have a grade on report cards if we go this route. Basically, what we would do is provide the growth report out of Rosetta Stone for each individual student. Again, because we can't have a paraeducator grading students. That's very clear by the state.
Now, is it going to operate on Windows?
It's going to use the student Chromebooks, and they sent us all of the I don't even know what it's called, specs of the type of electronic devices they need, but it is for student Chromebooks.
Well, where this is being used on a computer primarily, and will it be speaking aspects to this, and reading and writing?
Yes, it offers exceptional reading and writing opportunities, a lot of vocabulary, and one of the things that it does offer, and the students would have a headset, sort of noise canceling. It offers feedback on speaking. So the computer speaks, the person on the other end speaks, the student speaks back. They have an opportunity to adjust their accent if it's incorrect. The feedback on the speaking piece was what really set the Rosetta Stone platform apart.
And in the $60,000, oh, sorry, Herb. the $60,000 cost estimate that I just gave you includes that headset with microphone.
So we won't have a copy of the curriculum necessarily, will we? In other words, if we have a curriculum, a comprehensive curriculum anyway for this, the scaffolding in the curriculum would probably include, you know, things like listening and speaking and pronunciation, for example.
Yes,
Grammar,
yes,
vocabulary, writing, review skills and meaning and all that. So it's a pretty comprehensive program. I've heard of it.
yes.
It has been very successful. There are other programs around. I don't know whether you investigated the others or not. I know you're familiar with this one, and this is probably one of the best.
Yes, I did. My main piece was that I wanted a program that allowed students to get feedback and that wouldn't require one of our professionals to do the assessing, because I knew that the state of Connecticut doesn't permit that. I also did research a number of different programs, and this was the most comprehensive. There is a scope and sequence available. Once we, when we get everything set, we will have that available.
And as far as the students are concerned, according, my understanding is that Rosetta takes students and provides them with diversity of characters, and students can relate to whatever these characters are. I don't know what that means, whether it's ethnic background or gender things or anything, things of that kind or not. But what's the extent of that in this program?
Right. I think what that means, if that's in the frequently asked questions, what it might do is it might say, Sally is in Madrid and she needs to find the museum. What does she say? Like, it puts students in different scenarios. It allows students to look at different situations. I did not see anything that remotely made any allusions to gender identity, anything like that. It's pretty much a straightforward language program that's unbiased in terms of those types of issues.
Herb, if you're done, Donna also has her hand up.
I have other questions, but I'll hold it.
Okay, Donna, if you want to go next.
Thank you. I've actually used Rosetta Stone and I thought it was a good program. One of the things is I agree with Laura, 5 to 6 languages for 5th through 8th grade, I think is too many. If we had a school that was much larger and you could have, 40 kids studying each language potentially, I would think differently, but we have classes of 20, and I think that makes it too thin. So I would definitely say stick with the Spanish. Having done some Latin, I think that maybe that should be put on hold for the older grades. There's value in lots of things, but learning a language that you can actually speak first before a language that is basically just written, for the most part, I think would be better for the kids. The other thing is, like, I know when I did the lessons, and the program has probably been upgraded since, but you kind of get to a point where it's really good, but your brain needs a break. So I think there needs to be a little flexibility during those 2 class times a week, where if the kids need to stop the speaking portion and move on to a different aspect of the training, that they have a little bit of that flexibility. But I'm not clear why there can't be any grades if the system generates a report and all the power would be inputting those grades, not determining the grades. I think it doesn't give the students a feedback of how well they're doing, their families a feedback, or even us if this is working. If we have, you know, all the kids are doing this and all of them are doing really poorly, it doesn't really give us a chance to assess things better, or you or Phil to just kind of say, okay, this is worth the try, but it's not working, or it's worth the try and it's working better than when we had a full-time Spanish teacher. Maybe we only need a part-time Spanish teacher. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but it just, the more data we have, the better we can make decisions, or the better decisions.
Yeah, you're right. And there will be assessments and students will receive feedback and grades, or feedback and reporting on their progress. It's just that when you Power School, the way it's set up to report grades out, a certified teacher has to go in there and set up the assignments and then put the grades in. And that is not permitted if you are not a certified teacher. So students will receive feedback, and they will receive progress reporting, and they will be able to advance. Another thing is that there may be students in the room who are, maybe someone's a level 1 Spanish if we're going with only one language, and then there's somebody who's a level 2 Spanish, and those assignments don't gel in the grade book, because Power School itself is a whole nother platform that we use. So parents will receive feedback and students will understand how they're doing. It just won't be on the report card itself.
It seems like there should be a certified teacher on staff that can plug in the assignments so that the para can just plug in the grades.
Well, I mean, it's quite a complicated program, and the certified teachers on our staff are all assessing and grading the classes that they're teaching. So if we had a certified teacher, say, our music teacher, say, for example, and he was a vet, whatever, that would be additional work that he would have to do in a class that he was not teaching, just to do data entry.
So the state of Connecticut doesn't allow a non-certified teacher to set up a grade book.
Does not allow non-certified teachers of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, please.
A grade. They cannot assign a grade. So that was, Donna, one of the things that I spent time on this. Mary Kay spent the majority of the time on the program. I went back and forth with the state about certification, and there's some flexibilities in place right now that would allow someone to teach Spanish through a certain grade level if they already have a certification. Well, the odds of finding someone that has a K6 certification that also speaks Spanish, they have jobs. There's so many open jobs right now. These people don't exist. And so when I talked to them, I had specifically asked about an online program. The response we got back was grades. It was two-pronged. One was if it's going to count towards a high school credit, which we never do, you would have to assign a grade and you would have to follow the curriculum. It's not going to be assigned as a high school credit because we don't do that. It just allows someone to start at a higher level if they go to the high school, just as all middle schools. The other part of that was the grading piece. And basically what they said was would need a certified teacher to assign the grades, which basically means that certified teacher has to know exactly what each of those individual kids is doing and be able to provide feedback on it. We don't have anyone on staff to do that right now. And that's one of the pros for us of the first program that Mary Kay was showing would require that certified teacher. We don't have that person. And so we thought one of the pros of this program is that it allows you still get a kind of progress report, a check-in, and students can log in at home and see this, and parents can see it, and we can provide it with the report card, but it doesn't take that certified teacher to do it. They're just logging in. And the paraeducator that would be in charge of this would also be able to see this, and so could Mary Kay. So if, you know, Tracy Anderson's a student in 8th grade and Tracy Anderson's been on the same lesson for three classes, we can see that and we can go and talk to Tracy and say, okay, you're stuck. What are you stuck on? How can we help you? That is definitely the pro of offering Spanish only, and having a native speaker in the room. But it is a state requirement to have a certified teacher to be able to assign grades.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Herb?
Yeah, I have, thank you, Mary, for your presentation and information. It's been very informative. I appreciate it. But with this computer assisted language software, the software user, in this case, the students that we have, they'll be dealing with images, I assume, and text material, sounds to teach words and things like that, and grammar probably by repetition of some kind. But and you mentioned this previously, I wasn't quite sure whether I agree or even know really whether they have writing practices or not. You said that they did, but I would like to have you check that to see whether that is something that students would not be exposed to in this program. It's a wonderful program, and you know, it's been around for umpteen years, and it's been refined, and I'm sure it would suit our purposes fine. But there are just a couple of things that they may not provide. One of them is,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'll stop.
They do offer writing. They offer sentence, same way that they do in a typical Spanish class, conjugation of verbs, your typical, you know, writing of sentences, asking questions, all of the things that a student would write. They also offer almost like a narrative writing. Once the student gets much better at writing, they can actually write stories in Spanish. And as I mentioned, the K-12 platform that I'm talking about is slightly different than the computer assisted learning that is done on an individual basis. So this is built for students and scaffolded so that it provides you with basic skills and vocabulary, and then moves you forward in a way that makes sense to Bloom's taxonomy, to critical thinking, to all of the different ways that students learn. There are workbooks and activities that they can do, so they can, it's not just on the computer, there should be art, there are art activities, there are projects that they can do. So it's a multi-pronged, multifaceted program.
The workbooks extra cost?
Everything is included in the price that was quoted.
And that was $10,000
And change.
and change.
I mean, if I'm going shopping and I'm telling my husband how much I'm spending, it's 10,000.
That would cover 200 students.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Tracy?
Yes, first question is, do we still have a Spanish program at Center School?
So we literally, and I'll say her name shortly when I talk about staffing, but we hired someone the first day of school, I think it was. She is part-time and just getting back into the business and was looking for that 0.5. So I asked those questions. Would you be interested in more? Not to try and take her away from the elementary school, because that's not the right move to do either. That person's looking for a 0.5 position. So yes, we still have Spanish at the elementary level. It's basically 1 day a week.
All right, thank you. I'm just wondering for long term, if we were to continue this again in another year with the suggestions of having 5th and 6th grade do Spanish, or everyone do Spanish. That was just my, for consistency question. Mary Kay, for the research project and presentation that the students are going to do now, I was curious how that was presented to them, what the students' expectations might be for the outcome once a decision is made by us. What are they, have they been told would be possibly expecting for a program for the rest of the year?
I specifically told our instructional assistant to be as, not vague, but to allow them to explore the language of their choice without any real, like, if you do a good job, you're going to get to take, Japanese. I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation. We did not know whether or not, number one, how many languages. We didn't know whether or not it would, what's going to happen this evening. So they were just asked to explore a language that they would be interested in taking and provide persuasive reasons why.
All right, thank you. And then just opinion wise, I can see both sides. I can understand with 20 kids only doing one language, but I also see a missed opportunity if we limit it to just Spanish, in the fact that students will not have the opportunity to explore in a situation in the middle school, even just in 7th and 8th grade, where they're exploring some of the languages they have an opportunity to take at some of the high schools we send our students to, in a less challenging situation where they're not going to be graded as hard, so they could see, maybe they're interested in Latin, see if it's something they want to try. If it's not, then they could go back to the Spanish, or, So I feel like it's an opportunity that we might be missing. And for our students, when I know in the high schools, at least in A.O. Smith, there's many other languages you can choose. And I remember as a middle schooler having the option to take 4 different languages in the middle school I was in. And as you're getting into 7th and 8th grade and kind of exploring who you are and what your interests are, that choice is important.
Right. And one of the things I did ask them about was if a student was really language savvy, because some kids are so really great at absorbing languages and doing great with them, would they be able to do a second language independently, maybe as an independent project? So say, for example, if I'm somebody who I love Spanish, but I have relatives who are French, would I be able to do both? And I believe that there would be the opportunity for that on the student's own time. That's something that we can explore. If there is a kid who, or more than one child, who really is interested in doing another language. And one of the things we also offer in our middle school is we have a flex period, which is an enrichment period. We could certainly look at making one of those flex periods a language learning period. So they could take it more than once in their schedule.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. The program, you get all of the languages, whether or not you go with one. It does provide opportunity at different times. Maybe if we just did Spanish during that Spanish time, the world language time now, if Mary Kay wanted to institute a different block, and provide those opportunities, she could. It doesn't cost more. It's just part of the cost.
Brianna, you haven't had a chance to ask a question yet.
Thanks. Yeah, I really liked Anne's original suggestion about just having Spanish for those first 2 years and then letting the children have choice. Choice is awesome and important. And I think I hear other members of our group here saying that as well. For me, for this to be successful for a student, it comes down to their behavior and work habits, because it is so independent and individual. So it would make sense to me that you would start off with Spanish for everyone, because that would just make it a lot easier for the teacher who's in the room who does speak Spanish. It would make it easier for her to help keep students on task and engaged and so on. If it's in a language that she's not familiar with, it makes it a little harder for her to teach the children the appropriate learning skills that they need in order to be participating in this kind of a program. And once they show they've got that down, then I would be open to having them make some more choices. The other thing I wanted to say was that we need to not we need to. Some educators are switching their mindset to looking at student growth rather than a set grade. And programs like Lexia, which we have added, work that way. They work individually for each student, and it measures their growth. And the reason why that's important is because not all students start on the same playing field, academically or otherwise. And it's not important to me, for example, in my classroom, that all students can read all of the same, let's say 40 words. What matters to me is that I know where they started. We make steady progress throughout the year, and they've made adequate success by the end of the school year. So that's where, right, making a grade for something is hard, but I think having that report from Rosetta Stone showing the students' growth, and if the parents can access that anytime, that's perfect, a perfect solution for me on that one. So those were just my thoughts. I appreciate all of the research that you have done. I do think world language is really important. I know students enjoy it too. So, and the EOS programs are great. So I'm sure other high schools offer that as well. Let's get them started.
Okay, Donna, your hand is still up. Is that a leftover from, or do you have a second question?
I had a follow-up question, and it may have already been answered to some extent. One is, because it's a 12-month subscription, will our students and their families have access to it over the summer so that they can continue to grow and reinforce?
Yes, they will.
Okay, and
Yeah.
and the second was kind of piggybacks on what has just been said, as far as if a student, once they kind of get used to doing the Spanish and how the program works, and that way, if they're interested in exploring an additional language, if they would have on their own time or in an enrichment period, if they would have access to that, because some people do thrive on learning languages. So it would kind of give them their opportunity to grow, along with keeping it manageable for the instructor in the room.
Yes.
Han?
If you're in a classroom with a group of kids and they're all on the computers, are they working at their own individual pace? In other words, or is everybody doing the same lesson the same day?
I think, the scaffolding of the program, I'm certain that it will begin. Students will most likely there's always a baseline or a pre-test or some sort of assessment that puts a student at a specific spot. My thought would be that most kids, maybe in 5th and 6th grade, would be on the similar levels. 7th and 8th may have different exposures to language. We won't know that until we pre-test. In all likelihood, there will be kids who are on the same lesson, so there can be teamwork and sharing. It's not just individually on the computer. There's other opportunities for them to interact and to use the language.
Okay, thank you.
Laura? Oh, you're on mute. Laura, sorry, you're on mute. Laura, can you come off?
I could barely hear you because I was talking. Sorry. So what I was saying, I love the idea that they have other projects that they can do, because screen time can be exhausting, and so 2 questions. I meant to ask first how many minutes they have it the 2 times a week, but then I'm also wondering, with those other projects or workbooks, how does that get assessed when that's not on the computer?
There's a key provided for assessing, or a teacher addition, similar like what we have, a teacher key. You asked a question first about
How many minutes?
Their world language, their UA classes are 45 minutes per day.
Okay.
So they would have that 5th and 6th graders have that once a week. 7th and 8th graders have Spanish twice a week.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, remember 45 minutes a week for a foreign language is not a long time. So, we were talking about writing in this program. Let's just be honest with ourselves that there's probably not a lot of writing that our students are going to get to, simply because it might be filling in a word or reading a sentence where you're filling in a word just because of the sheer volume. If you were truly going to do a language, you would do it every single day for that amount of time. And we're providing some background for students. I think Mary Kay's attempt to in the 7th and 8th grade is a positive move for a better opportunity for our kids as they approach high school. But the lower level, where we're talking about kindergarten through 5th grade, where you're 30 to 45 minutes a week, you're basically learning vocabulary and some of that background and knowledge of that language.
Anne, I see your hand.
Would it be possible for a 7th or 8th grader to continue Spanish and take on another language with the 2 periods? That's one question. The second is, would we align our languages to those at E.O. Smith so they could kind of get a head start? And then I think you could still offer that independent study option if they wanted to learn a family language or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I haven't looked into the logistics of offering, like, say, Spanish on the Tuesday that you have class and French on the Thursday. I think it makes most sense if you have continuity Tuesday,
Okay.
Thursday, and then if you wanted to do the additional program, then you could do that separately. But again, we haven't even begun to explore all the many options that they have. I met with him a number of times just to get the basic information and how it would meet the needs of our population. But I'm certain as we begin our training and as we begin the program, we will have more information, and it will begin to flesh out a lot better for us when we start really putting it into practice. The big piece for me was that, we have, not that we have this money, that's not what I'm trying to say, but we have a budgeted salary for a language teacher that we have not been able to hire. And I'm not saying we need to spend all the money, but what I'm saying is, if we're going to spend money, it should be on something that's worthwhile. I don't want to just throw, $50,000 from the Learn Language Network at something when it doesn't really meet our needs. This is a fairly decent option using the staff we have and the kids we have.
Yeah, and I would say, so Mary Kay's job was to present this to you tonight, and for the board, and you all have made different suggestions, right? Your job is to say, if you make a motion, it should be, we're only going to provide Spanish, or we're going to provide Spanish through 6th grade, and then up to whatever number of options for 7th and 8th grade. You need to make that recommendation, and that's what you would have to vote on. If you wanted to match E.O. Smith's language for all of the grades, that's what you should say, and that's the languages that we would then offer. But that's the board's, I think, role in this. And I just want to say, just because Mary Kay doesn't probably know the exact number, we budgeted for the teacher we had, we have a budget of $90,000. So you would see a $30,000 about savings if you ran this program all year long. And so, her point is, there's some money there to continue a language program. I'm going to be honest with you. If you don't do it, there is no language program at the middle school. That will remain open until it's filled. And Mary Kay is going to be directed by me to figure out what she's going to do with that Spanish block, because we can't have it as a Spanish block with a paraeducator in there with no plan. And that's the reality of where we're at and why we're trying to pitch something now. If Mary Kay had her way, she would have presented this before school started. But I'll take the ownership of that and say I made her research and make sure we had all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed before we brought it to you. But there are not people out there right now applying for this position. And so we are trying to come up with a creative solution.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the amount of research that you've done, but I also appreciate the fact that you've asked the students to start thinking about how one chooses a language, because thinking about thinking and thinking about learning is a really essential skill that our kids need to learn. And the fact that people who speak different languages think about things in a different way because language and thought are so combined is an important concept. We're not, honestly, in, once or twice a week and a little bit, whether it's in person or online, we are not teaching these kids to be fluent in another language. We're exposing them to the thoughts that other languages exist and how one goes about the process of learning a language. So for me, it matters a lot less what language they're learning, because really it is going to be self-paced. And because it's self-paced, everybody's going to be at all different levels. You're really not going to get a whole lot of groupings together to be able to do a lot of interactive work with one another. So I'd rather see a lot of languages offered and capitalize on their interest. So for example, we might not offer Asian languages at EO. Should we not allow kids to study an Asian language if that's what they're fascinated in? There's a lot of Japanese culture. They watch cartoons where they have Japanese with English subtitles. If that's what they're interested in, they'll study more and learn more because they're interested in it, rather than something that then is a feeder into another class. They'd even do better in Spanish in high school if they study Japanese in middle school, if they're interested in Japanese, because then they'll be engaged and learn more with it and are more likely to continue learning on their own, on their own pace like that. So I just want to put the plug in for student engagement as something that we really need to be focusing on, especially at the middle school. If we wanted to make adjustments where for the younger kids who are still just learning that you needed some balance for that paraprofessional, I understand that entirely, but especially the 7th and 8th graders who are doing this twice a week, I wouldn't constrict their learning. If they want to learn Japanese and Chinese, more power to them. Tracy and Donna, I see both of your hands. I think Donna, your hand was up first. Okay, go ahead, Donna.
Bill, could you put up that sample motion so that we can see it? I'd like to make a motion that we approve utilizing Rosetta Stone for Hall Memorial School for the 2022-2023 school year for world language instruction at a cost of I believe it was.
I don't think we have to include the cost, Donna.
Okay.
I think, can you, let me see if I can see everybody on the screen. Thanks. Are there, go ahead, Herb. Oh, you're on mute. Hang on, Herb, you're on mute. Herb, you're on mute.
You need a second too, Michelle.
Yeah, I was hoping that's what Herb's hand was for. I'm not sure. Herb, is that a second? No, I still can't hear you. You're off.
It shows off though.
I'm not seeing. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yep, that's better. Lean in. Were you going to second the motion, Herb?
I just second the motion.
Okay. Not to put words in your mouth, but okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded to offer languages using Rosetta Stone in the coming year. I would like to make a friendly amendment to that motion that we allow 7th and 8th graders the choice of at least 5 languages, including at least 1 or 2 that are not Romance languages.
Do we need the amendment since all I said was purchasing the program? I didn't say anything about Spanish only.
It depends on how much direction we want to give the administrators in their work. We could leave it at that, and then Phil and Mary Kay have to take what we say and move forward. The reason I offered the friendly amendment is because I do believe that while Latin is the basis of many elements of our scientific method, and Romance languages have a lot to offer in understanding English, there's even more to understand and an affinity for some people who like Asian languages as something very different than what they study now. So I'd like to offer them more choice in the 7th and 8th grade. Laura?
So
So before you go ahead, Laura, I offered a friendly amendment. It can either
Oh,
be
so that-
accepted or
okay, okay.
rejected by the people who made the motion and seconded it.
I don't have a problem with that. Because kids are going, you're basically saying the kids are going to make their own choice.
Yeah.
And
And we may not have anybody who's interested in studying Chinese, but
and maybe with parental permission, understanding that there's not going to be even a para that's going to necessarily be able to assist them, that they're kind of all on their own. Would need to be
right.
thought out a little bit.
Okay. Herb, are you okay with that as the second?
I don't know, it doesn't, well, this is the first time in to the Rosetta Stone, you know, I would think we would just have one language, which would be determined by the administration. The other thing is, the supervisor in that room, when you have multiple languages on the computer, would not be available probably to help students if they required it. It seemed to me if there was one language and if she was very well versed in it somehow, even as an instructor, at least you have someone there who has an understanding and knowledge of, say, Spanish, if that's what the administration decides to use.
So Herb, as our parliamentarian, I have a question about process then. If the person who made the motion is okay with it, would my friendly amendment count as the second, or do you as the second need to approve it as well?
I would think you'd need both.
Yeah, I don't have my my Robert's rules in front of me.
And am I allowed to ask a question?
So again, this is a process question, and I'm going to defer to Herb on this, that the friendly amendment then fails.
It shouldn't be a friendly amendment on this particular item. It should be an amendment, really.
Well, I thought it was going to be friendly, Herb, before you started. Well,
I would agree to it if you just give the administration the option of determining how many. We've said 5, but you know,
I can live with that.
At least one with the possibility of another 4. You know, so they have some leeway there.
Okay, I can live with that, Herb. So it is friendly. See, so we'll with the amendment that the 7th and 8th grade students would be able to choose more than one language, and it's up to the administration to determine the exact ones and how that process happens. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Does anybody need me to repeat it before we ask questions?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is to move ahead with using Rosetta Stone to provide language at the middle school, allowing 7th and 8th graders to choose, to make a choice of which language they study, and allow the administrators to choose which languages they will allow the students to choose from amongst, right?
Do we need to have in the fact that we want the younger grades to study Spanish?
No, because the younger grades already study Spanish.
Okay.
Michelle, I think she was talking about grades
Oh,
5.
you mean 5th, 6th, and 5th, sorry, for the you don't mean the elementary school. That yes, that if you'd like to be specific, it would be Spanish in grades up through 6 and allowing the 7th and 8th graders to choose. Herb, did I capture that?
Another consideration is that all of these students are going into E.O. Smith, and I think we should determine, you know, if they have Spanish and French and Chinese, which I think have, then, you know, there are opportunities there too. But just to have a random language.
Well, the way the motion stands now is that the administration could choose which languages they offer. Is that okay with you, that the administration chooses? Or do we have to start the motion again from scratch?
I have complete confidence in the administration on this.
Okay, fair enough. So we have a motion, and Laura has her hand up, so now we'll go for discussion. Laura, questions and discussion.
Yeah, okay, so So it sounds to me that the motion now precludes the administration from deciding to only do one language.
Yes.
So they must have at least, there must be at least two choices.
Yes. That's the way the motion stands right now.
Okay.
And you can disagree with that and
Right,
vote
right.
against this, right?
I would have agreed with just leaving it to the administration so that they could just choose one language if they wanted to. I appreciate the power of choice, but I also appreciate the power of conversation and having enough, especially in learning a foreign language, having other people who are learning the language with you that you can try it out with outside of class. And I have seen that in my own classroom with students who were learning Mandarin, and outside of class, they were trying to talk with each other and they were practicing and they were having fun with it. So I am concerned about them trying to learn a language only with a computer. And I know they're not going to become fluent, but that conversational aspect, the fact that learning a language is communication, I think we need to support them to be able to have to try it out with each other. And the fact that the instructional assistant speaks Spanish. I mean, I don't care what language learning. I agree with you. It's about learning about language and different languages and how that affects your brain. And I was a language kid. I took German and Spanish and then have studied Italian, Portuguese, etc. I mean, languages are cool, but you need somebody to speak it with. So I just feel like we need to leave it up to the administration to make those decisions, whether they want to just start with one or give them a couple choices. And I did have one question also. This past, so our 7th and 8th graders, what is their foreign language background up to this point? Have they had a teacher up until now? Is this just this year that we're no longer, or has it been going on for a bit that they have not really had any good foreign language instruction?
Let's be frank. They went through COVID for a couple of years. So, and with some gaps, I mean, they've had their world language on and off, just like every other district. So it's, you know, I don't know that it's been super consistent. But the good thing is we've had gaps, but we've been able to try and plug them as best we could. This would be another pretty big plug, to be honest with you, for us.
I'm wondering how much difference there is between the 5th and 6th graders in their language and the 7th and 8th graders, because what they've just been going through. Like, do we need to make a differentiation there, or really are they kind of starting at the same place right now?
Mary Kay, you can chime in, but I would speak for the elementary school kids coming up to 5th grade and 6th grade. They've had some consistency. I would think 5 through 8 right now is pretty much starting on a similar playing field at this point in time.
Thanks.
Brianna, your hand is up next.
Thank you. 2 quick things. One, it might be cool to put this notion out to community members, because we might have some fluent speakers out in our town, in our community, that might be willing to speak with the students or participate somehow. When we have experts in our area, why not use them? And then, are we saying that the 5th and 6th graders can only do Spanish under all circumstances?
I don't think that's what the motion says. I think it says that that's what we would offer if they had a block and were able to do that on their own time. That part would be, it's allowed that they could learn something other than Spanish. It's just that the block during which we have the instruction, I think that's the way that was intended. So if they have access to it and want to, study, some obscure language, after school, and they have access to it on their computer, they can do whatever, what other languages they'd like to learn. We're not going to shut it down, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I agree that the common language for them is a good place to start, just because of the habits they will need. But I just wanted to make sure that if we had somebody who wanted to know all of them, in like 5th grade, they'll be able to do so. Thanks.
Yeah, you never know. Okay, Donna.
So after hearing, I think that it is prudent that the Spanish, especially with what Phil said and Mary Kay about where our older students really are on what they know and what they can do. It might be most prudent to only offer the Spanish in the class in the normal language time, and then give the students the freedom to add another language on their own, or more than one language on their, whatever makes them happy. But since this is new for the school, new for the teacher or the para, new for the students, maybe keeping it simple is going to give us the best success. And like Laura mentioned, the kids can practice at lunch or one of their other things, if they're doing a unit on food or whatever it might be, to encourage that, maybe even set up a table in the cafeteria that, if you sit at this table, you're going to try to only speak Spanish. And that way, just other ways to encourage them, but to kind of keep it manageable, especially during the learning process with the new software.
Tracy, I see your hands up too.
Yeah, as a teacher, I can see if we have more than one option for students to be learning at the same time, it would be similar to the differentiation that teachers does in other areas as far as reading or science, reading or math, where the reports would be coming out and you have a group of kids, even if it's just 2 kids who are learning Chinese or Spanish, or, you pull those kids for a part of that 45 minutes, you do a group with them while the others are still working independently on a skill that you see they're both a lesson they're both stuck on, or some kind of an enrichment that goes along with what's the materials that are prepared. And then you could probably do in 45 minutes 3 different groups like that or more, depending on the paraprofessional that you have and what amount of kids there are. And then you rotate the next day, you'd work with some other kids, so that we could still have that option, as long as the management and the routines of when you're working independently, you have your headphones on, you're quiet, you're doing your lessons. Once those routines are established, those other group lessons could happen. And even there might be opportunities for performance, like sharing what you've done, something you've learned in your language, even if the other kids don't know the language that you're presenting, you could still do something with some kind of, a short skit that would have an interpretation. I think we're getting stuck. I don't know, my opinion here, I feel like we're getting stuck in the management and forgetting that the program has an opportunity for reinforcement from, if there's a problem, there's someone on the other side that hopefully the technology will work and they'll be able to assist that student, and it's not going to fall on that paraprofessional or have that kid floundering like, I don't know what to do anymore. That's just my opinion from listening to everyone. I hate to have us pigeonhole this year into confine it too much and lose out on an opportunity.
Anne?
One more quick thought. When Brianna talked about the 5th and 6th graders having the option of another language, perhaps they could do that during their flex time. So they'd still be participating in Spanish, but they could do that extra if that's where their interest lies.
A question about flex time. There are other opportunities though for them to do things during flex time. That's not, yeah. So I would suspect there's a lot of demands on the flex time.
But if, say we get to the second semester and we decide that there's a group of kids who are really into a specific language, we could do a language enrichment flex, because the options and the offerings vary. And we have some robust things right now, but they may only go a semester and then something different for next semester.
Laura?
Gotta find my mouse. All right, so I just need clarification on the program. When the student is working independently with their headset and the computer, is it a live person on the other end, or is it a computer program that is responding to them?
It's a combination of both. It depends. There's different aspects of the lesson. I would say it's more than likely a recorded person, but there are opportunities for live interface as well.
Okay, because I was picturing recorded,
Yes.
voice, and so, when Tracy was talking about the person on the other end would be able to help, I wasn't picturing it being an actual person, and the IA is the person that would help. And this is not a certified teacher, right? Who's in there, who we're fortunate actually is a native Spanish speaker, but doesn't speak other languages and is not certified as a language teacher. So I am concerned about the situation becoming a little overwhelming with multiple languages in the classroom. So
There is live support though, like,
okay.
for
For
example,
the students?
well, she as the instructor can seek live support, and also a student could as well, like say they were home with their parents and stuck on, a conjugation or so, I don't even know. I mean, it's been a month.
Okay, so they can.
There is live support available 24/7.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay.
Donna?
I just want to make sure that we're not making the situation a little overwhelming for the para that's in there too. Because some of the great suggestions that Tracy had, if you're a certified teacher and you have training in how to do that, that's one thing, but we're dealing with a parent. I don't know this individual and I don't know their skill level or what they're comfortable with, but I don't want them to look at what we're asking and then feel like deer in the headlights and go someplace else. So I don't want to overwhelm them. I don't want to pretend that they couldn't do this. I really have no idea, but I just want to make sure we're not going to overwhelm them.
The good news is that this person was prepped. Before they came in the door, we had a pretty lengthy conversation about potential opportunities that we were investigating, and we were pretty upfront with her about it. And she's still here. So
You didn't scare her away yet.
yeah, and I also think this person might have aspirations for teaching in the future. And so this is an opportunity, and I think she's interested in it. So I appreciate that, Donna. We thought the same thing. We didn't want to scare the person away. Michelle, if I can, I think what I'm hearing you say, and I Herb made a comment before that he trusts the administration, and I appreciate that. One thing I think is important for the board to understand is that if we see this crashing and burning with multiple languages, we're not going to wait to have a conversation with you. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of it. We're probably going to make an adjustment earlier than that. We expect that the Spanish is something that we could implement seamlessly, especially having a native speaker in the room. But if we offered 3 or 4 other languages and it just was not working, we wouldn't wait for all sorts of behavior management issues to pop up, because that's what would happen. We would make adjustments earlier than that, and then we would just report back to you and just say, look, we tried this. It was very challenging, and we need to make some adjustments, and just explain that. So if you're willing to accept that portion of it, I think that, from Mary Kay, in my perspective, the 5-6 Spanish with the opportunity in flex at a different time, and the 7-8 having the opportunity to choose from several different languages, including Spanish, as an option, that works. I think that would work for us. That's kind of what we were kind of expecting you to think to say, but just with the understanding that we might put the brakes on as educators if it's not working.
That's perfectly fair. We don't mean to micromanage your capacity to make sure our schools are healthy and safe places where kids can learn to their best. I think the intent of the motion was to start at the least restrictive option, and then if you need to be more restrictive, of course, that makes sense. Okay, so let's call the question. We've had a lot of discussion about this. The motion on the table is to use Rosetta Stone to offer multiple languages in the middle school, Spanish through the 6th grade, and an option to choose from in the 7th and 8th grade. All those in favor of using Rosetta Stone in the middle school signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, thank you all. That was a rigorous discussion. I'm glad we had a lot of interest in the language programs, and let's keep our fingers crossed that we can find adequate staffing moving forward. But I think this is a great move. We, over the years, have frequently said that, boy, we wish we could offer German like Mansfield does, or fill in the blank. And this is going to be able to give us some options that otherwise a small district would not be able to offer. So that is good news for our students. Okay, that was the presentation. I want to recognize that it is 8:26 and we have a huge agenda in front of us, including at the end of the meeting, educational specifications. I would like to move that we table the education specifications conversation for a meeting in the future, so that anyone who's on the phone waiting for that part of the discussion, who's not a board member, can know that we're not going to get to that tonight, because I don't think there's any way we should open that conversation at 10 o'clock after we've been through everything else on the agenda.
I second that.
Thank you, Donna.
Can I ask a question? I know the school building committee is waiting with bated breath for the ed specs. Phil, was this going to be a lengthy process tonight, or? Yes, okay, then I agree. We should.
So
table it.
instead, let's use that time for scheduling a future meeting date, which we can all manage. Does that sound fair?
Very
Sooner.
soon.
Let's not wait another
Very
month.
soon,
I don't mean
yeah.
to keep you waiting.
It would
Okay.
be wonderful if we could meet before the next school building committee meeting.
Well,
That would be
I don't know if
wonderful,
that's
if possible.
possible, but we will look at dates later in the meeting. All
Okay,
those in
thank you.
favor of tabling the conversation for a future meeting date on the ed specifications for this evening signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Brianna, abstentions? Okay, because it was not unanimous, we have to do a roll call vote. So I'm going to go through this quickly. If you would please come on and say yay, nay, or abstain, that would be helpful. And I'm just going to go through my screen as I see you. Anne? You have to come off mute, Anne. Sorry.
May I change my vote to a no?
You can vote to whatever you want.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy?
Yes.
Brianna?
Nay.
Laura?
Aye.
Herb?
Aye.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. Apologies for those of you who were very committed to that, and for those on the call who were on the call for that purpose. But we will try to get to that as soon as possible because we do think it's very important. Okay, next is the superintendent report.
Yep. Mary Kay, thanks for your presentation. Go get some sleep. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it.
So the opening of school was, we had a great opening. Our staff took part in convocation. They had professional development. They did the meet and greet with families on the first 3 days. Despite some of, and I'm sure you've seen this in Mansfield, some of the transportation challenges and staffing, our start with students was relatively smooth. I have to give a major shout out to our local drivers. Our local bus drivers have been absolutely amazing. Yes, we've had some delays, but we are down a bus and they have picked up the slack, and they've done just incredible work for us. And I greatly appreciate our local drivers' work. The preparation for the opening of schools, I will say, use the word feverish. We had several projects that came together right at the end of summer, and it was just due to supply chain issues. It happened to be that everything happened in 2 weeks, and I kid you not, in 2 weeks. We pushed out new laptops to certified staff. They came in on Thursday and staff came in on Monday. We installed a brand new wireless infrastructure across the entire district. Actually the drops, the access points had been on order for months and months and months. They came in 2 weeks before the start of school, and Novus made it happen. We distributed new portable radios to our bus drivers and provided training. So we no longer have dead spots in town. They can access our schools, both schools. In an emergency, they can access emergency personnel and they can access public works. Think about our ice storm last year where we had buses pulled over. They would have direct communication. We had new unit ventilators put in the week prior to staff arriving. There were 8 unit ventilators that were put in classrooms at Center School. Again, supply chain issue. MCOR came through once they were in and they got them installed. Yay, we have new heat at Center School in 8 classrooms. The AC in the band room was installed at Hall. We had the Center School parking lot was chip sealed and relined. If you've driven by Center School, you also notice that our public works crew did an amazing job. Our islands were overgrown. It was just a nightmare. They did all sorts of work there. They put all the shrubs. They paved it for us. It was just at cost, so I appreciate their collaboration. And then the crosswalk at Hall School, that project was completed right before the start of school. And so that's phase 1 for that Hall School sidewalk project. There's more to come. I'm sure you're well aware we made several steps towards improving our cybersecurity. One of those transitions was to Gmail on the school side. That was not an easy transition for us. It was a bit of a challenge. We're still working through it. And I know, for some of you that we still have some issues. So if you have issues, please contact Brenda. We will get you in and she will connect you with Novus so we can get you through. Part of that is that we have 2-factor authentication now. That is our cybersecurity wall so that we don't get hacked like we did. And so that's really important. I will say that the timing of all of these projects, again, it was the last month was slightly chaotic. You're lucky that I'm already bald because you would have seen bald patches on my head. It was pretty crazy, but thanks to all the contractors that came together, the staff that made it work, our custodians for being flexible and having all, they'd cleaned everything and then we're making a mess pulling out heaters and things. They just came together and it was great. So lots of great projects. We had a really good opening though. And thanks to the board members, hopefully you enjoyed convocation. We went a little bit long, but hopefully you enjoyed it for those that could attend. Our enrollment right now, and Herb, here's all your numbers for you that you had asked about last time. Center School has 226 students. Hall School has 175 students. Our total enrollment as of today is 401. Thank goodness that we hired another kindergarten teacher because we have 45 kindergarten students. Our special education numbers, we currently have 69 students district-wide. We're at 17%. That number has come down. We currently have 36 students that are eligible for 504 accommodations. We have 2 students who are currently outplaced. Our free and reduced numbers, which is something I think is important to share along with this, both schools are at 36%. When you hit 40%, that means you qualify automatically for free meals for all. And we are closing in on that. We've been creeping up there. We currently have 6 English language learners. And we have 6 students who are in magnet schools. And some of those magnet students are receiving special education services. So those are the numbers for where we're at right now for all the things that you had asked for. A little goes beyond what we normally report, but I think it's important to share. As far as staffing goes, I mentioned earlier, we hired Michelle Wozniak for Center School Spanish and Tadria Mahome. She's a paraeducator at Hall. We received resignations from speech and language teacher Mindy Hudon, HMS paraprofessional Alex Colgren, and CES preschool paraprofessional Kaylee Carr. Kaylee resigned today. She's looking to see if she wants to become a teacher and trying some different things out. So big losses for us in those departments, but we've actually been hiring some phenomenal staff. I will tell you, Mindy Hudon went into her own private practice. And obviously, we had a speech and language teacher at Center and Hall. And losing a second speech and language person was a significant loss because we didn't have the first one filled. Because Carol Frassinelli had resigned from Hall in June. When I use the word creative, here we go. So these positions are the ones that provide special education services for a student's individualized education plan. They're mandated by law. If they're in there, we have to provide the services. Speech and language is a shortage area, of course. We're not going to fill those positions. We're going to struggle. There are currently over 50 open speech and language postings in CT REAP today, which is where all the jobs get posted. And so we didn't want to, we felt this right away in June when we didn't get any applicants for this position. We've had it posted since June. We needed to pivot. And so Marsha McGinley, our pupil services director, she realized that we needed a creative approach to ensure that our students receive services and, you know, the same high quality services. We recently entered into a contract with EastCon to hire a speech and language pathologist 2 days a week at Center School. And we're doing that along with a speech and language paraprofessional, paraeducator. So the two of them are paired together. And the person from EastCon happens to be a Willington resident, Michelle Tharp. So that's very handy for us. And we also just entered into a contract with another speech and language pathologist to provide virtual services to HMS students with the support of a speech and language paraprofessional, paraeducator. So we've built teams, and through these creative solutions, and let me tell you, Marsha was out there just trying to figure out what we could do. These providers are going to allow us to meet our legal obligations and our requirements. We anticipate the cost of this change is actually going to result in some budget savings. We didn't think it was, it's early to tell. We didn't think it was going to. And remember that right now it's only a couple days a week at Center with the paraeducator. But we're going to monitor that progress as you know, IEPs are adjusted throughout the year. But kudos to Marsha. She really went out and talked to agencies, interviewed, didn't settle on the first thing that came along. And we really feel like we have a great solution for our kids, and that it's going to meet their needs. And the other part of that is she's been communicating with the families right along. So if we have a family that has a student with identified needs and of speech and language, they've been getting communications about what our plans are, including one went out today. So lots of adjustments in staffing because of that. Questions about that before I move on, or what I've shared so far?
I was wondering, the ELL students, what languages they speak, as we're talking about language
I
tonight.
don't know off the top of my head. Sorry, Laura.
Okay.
I would have to find out for you. I can though.
Okay.
Herb?
Phil, on staffing, in the past, we've had a staff directory, and I was wondering if you have time sometime, if you could update that, and so we could get a copy of that.
Yep, Brenda's doing it. Yep, we're trying to let the dust settle before that last the hires. With the adjustment, and actually I signed the contract today for the second speech and language person. So we'll start putting those things in, and we'll get
whenever it's appropriate.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, moving on then.
All right, so the after school program. So as you know, obviously with the approval of the calendar and the additional professional development days that for this school year, there's requests about childcare. And so part of that approval, we wanted to provide an opportunity for after school care on those early release days. I would like to do more than that. Hopefully that's something we can do in the future. We're focused on the early release days for now. We moved late just because of the details trying to get this information out to the families, but currently families are able to sign up for the after school program on those early release days at Center and Hall schools. That program will be run by paraprofessionals. We'll rotate through, we put a ballpark of 40 students per building as a ballpark. If we have 60 at center and significantly less hall, we can make adjustments. Right now, we wanted to see what would come in. We currently have 28 students. We just put out notification to parents that we have confirmed with M&J, and this is a big deal because you know the drama that's out there right now with the shortage of bus drivers. We have M&J has approved that they're going to get drivers for us, which is great. So we can transport kids home. Parents are being charged $60 for all of the dates unless they have a hardship. And so if they have a hardship, that basically means they're eligible for free and reduced lunch. And in that case, we're trying to do it at no cost for them. However, we are also, we can do the billing quarterly. So $15 per child for each, quarter throughout the year, or they can just pay it up front. I will tell you the cost covers the transportation. We're not the Board of Ed is not making a dime on this. They're not paying, you're not paying for paraprofessionals because they're already being paid as part of our budget. So it's just the cost of transportation, and we're not even factoring in snacks and lunches, which we will build into the programs at both schools. So again, as I said, at this point, we have 28 students attending. We may see additional students come in tomorrow, but we'll see. And so at this point in time, that's where we'll leave it. But the idea was that if there is someone is struggling, and there's a hardship, that just to communicate with their school's principal, and that we will make the adjustments where we can. So questions about the after school program. This is like hot off the press. We're moving along.
Donna has her hand up.
So in an effort to be a little creative, first of all, thank you for putting that program in place. But since we're going to be using Rosetta Stone, and I think you said we had budgeted $90,000 for the Spanish teacher, and this project with all the things will come in around 60. Could we use some of that savings to just fund the after school program for these dates?
That's up to the board. I wouldn't recommend using that specific money, but if you wanted to try and find money to cover the cost, I would look at that and make a recommendation, but that's up to the board. If you wanted to fully fund the program, that is up to you. I think if you do that, you also have to be careful that if you continue a program in the future, that you're not setting a precedent, that it's always going to be free, because nothing, there's a cost in it.
I would say that only because there's so much teacher training. Like this isn't a every day after school, when school gets out normal at 2:30 to say 5 or 5:30. This is kind of that gap time between when school normally ends and school is ending. If you would take a look and see where you specifically said you didn't want to take the money from that program, but if you would look and see where it might be reasonable to take the money from, or a part of it from, and then let us know. That way we can have a better discussion if it's something.
Yeah, I would just have to we'd have to refund those families that have already paid.
And I think the other question, Donna, would be that one of the reasons to, if we were to find a Spanish teacher, say we found someone who we couldn't fill the position if we've spent the funding for that, so we would have already paid for the Rosetta Stone, but it would close off our options to hire to use that pot of money. So we might want to look at other places rather than for the Spanish teacher's salary.
Well, if you can make some suggestions for our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can determine if it makes sense. I don't want to open up Pandora's box, but I know that, you just told us that 36% of our students are getting free or reduced lunch, which means that their families are hurting. So
They won't pay.
Laura?
thank you.
So I just had a couple questions. The first one, and I should probably know this and I could look at the calendar, but how many professional days are we talking about, and what are the hours for aftercare?
So we're looking at, I think it's 14 or 15 days throughout the year. We're not doing, it's only the days where there's professional development.
Right.
So if it's a day before Thanksgiving, it's an early release. We're not doing childcare that day. That's always been that way. It's just focused. I think they're mostly Fridays. I think there's one Thursday thrown in. And the hours for hall, there's a 12:05 dismissal. It would basically be 12:05 to 2:30. And then they would receive transportation home from 2:30 to approximately 3:30. The pickup at the center school program would be 1:05 to 3:30. And that transportation would then go from 3:30 to 4:30. I will tell you, obviously, and this is typical, if you try and run a program like this, the numbers right now at the elementary school are significantly larger than the middle school. If the middle school numbers stay low, what we may end up doing is and because they're siblings of elementary students in the middle school, if you know what I mean, a middle school student who's attending the program also has a sibling at the elementary who would be attending. It's like 80% of them, of the whatever it is, 6 or 8. I'm considering contacting those families if it stays at the current number to see if they would be willing for us to transport just a regular bus end of the day from the middle school, go to the elementary school, and they would then do the program only at one location. That would then lower our costs because of the number of runs a little bit, not much, because we still have to pay a 2-hour minimum. And then they would just go home at the 3:30 run with the elementary school students. We're not sure if that's going to happen yet, but it's something that we're looking at.
Okay, that was like my next question. 28 students have signed up. I figured there were more at center than hall, but I'm wondering what is the split?
I think it's 20 to 8, 21 to 7, something like that.
So that makes sense if you have very few and their older siblings, just to have them go over to center and do some intergrade activities.
Correct.
Although I can tell you that enrollment will go up significantly up until the Thursday before the first day.
I agree. And that's why we're trying to watch it and see
Right,
how,
it's only the beginning.
especially because we just announced that we had the commitment from M&J. I mean, that may make a difference.
Did you have additional questions, Laura?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Anne, I saw your hand.
What happens if you have more people than the 80 sign up? Do you have a plan for that, or?
We do, and we can pivot. We're watching. We're trying to make sure that the paraprofessionals that are running the program also have the opportunity for professional development. And so it works out that there's basically 4 that are providing professional development, are receiving professional development, and 4 that would be running the program. We built the schedule around that, so they would be alternating, so that it's not 4 that are always, doing professional development, or 4 that are always in the program. We've kind of split it that way. Honestly, if we wanted to do 6 and 2, there's nothing to say we couldn't. I think we more put the number on to say, please sign up as soon as you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Laura?
Just a quick follow-up for my other question. So if my math is right, and I'm really tired because I've been up and working since 5, but it seems to me that ends up being $1.70 an hour for the gap time and then transportation home. So just
Can't find a babysitter for that.
no.
Yeah,
In fact,
that's your
my college students were telling me they get paid more as babysitters than they do when they work in any type of educational setting like camp or whatever. And they thought what a travesty that was. Just had to throw that out there.
We think it was about $4 a day is what we had it down to per kid.
Which is not, of course, the full cost of what it costs to run the program, but because you have staffing built in, most programs, the highest expense is the staffing. But since you have the
Correct.
staffing built in, which is one of the reasons why it has to end at the end of the school days, because that's the timing of the contract.
Contractual end, yes.
And it would be one bus, right?
It's built in for 2, and just because with that number of kids, I didn't want to have them on the bus for 2 hours at the end of the day. It's just not fair. It's typically one bus goes to the Village Hill side of the town, and the other one goes to the Penny Hill side of the town.
That's good. Yeah, because traveling on the bus all over Willington at that time of day can be
Yeah,
exhausting.
makes it a long day. Yeah.
Fair enough. Are there any other additional questions about the after-school program? Okay, so go ahead, moving on, Phil.
All right, so professional development, I thought it was important again, and I did this following that agenda item intentionally. Our first professional development day is targeted a variety of training. Obviously, there was letters was in there. We have illustrative math. Some staff worked on writing functional behavior assessments. There was some professional development on the next generation science standards and Open SciEd. There was some PD on project-based learning, and we recently kicked off our next level work with the Great Schools Partnership to embed our Portrait of the Graduate into the curriculum. That recently started. We continue to roll out the new ELA curriculum, and yes, Nick Tell, the curriculum is in the library and it is also in my office for folks that want it. And, you know, obviously, any staff that are teaching reading, they're going into year 2 of letters training. So there is some significant PD going on. Some of ours, I know that people ask a lot of times, why don't the teachers do PD in the summer? We did. We paid teachers through our grants to come in and do some training. So we had some of our staff attended summer professional development. We hired a brand new teacher out of California. She arrived, she had stopped, had a layover in Ohio. Arrived on a Tuesday, something like that, and was in PD the next day. And so, you know, our staff is doing those things in the summertime. Our principals also did, because we had some significant staff turnover and some brand new teachers that didn't have a lot of experience. We provided new staff orientation during outside of that typical first 3 days of PD, because we didn't want them to miss things. So thanks to my administrative team for doing that. And so again, we're just doing a lot to ensure that our staff has the training that they need to, you know, apply the most effective teaching strategies to impact teaching and learning. So lots going on. We are moving, you know, I have the hat with the hair on fire. We're moving pretty fast and our staff is hanging in there. And we will continue to do that because we know it's the right thing to do. And all those initiatives align together. So lots going on.
Okay. We're ready to move on then to the financial report.
Okay. Sorry. So you can see it's always an odd time of year to present the financial report because most of the money's still there, but there are some things that are gone. So in program 1, the title grants are not applied yet to salary. And you can see that you know, it's going to be probably about 120,000 what would be in there. That's typical for that time of year. The 3% is low right now just because of the grants. Hall School looks really high because of things that are not encumbered. So no Spanish teachers not encumbered. That'll change tomorrow with the Spanish program. We recently hired a teacher who's not encumbered yet. So this number is not real. It's going to come down. It's probably closer to half of that. Another kind of not real number at this point was special education. Outplacements, the bills are not done. Related services and transportation not billed. Speech and language positions are not encumbered. Grants are not applied. So this number is easily $400,000 lower, as you know, once we apply all of those things. But it's, you know, I try to be transparent about that throughout the year. All of the transportation's encumbered. We are down a bus right now. As I mentioned, we pay for 6.5. We're utilizing 5.5. And so that with that 5.5, we'll receive a credit. And we'll monitor that. So some of this may come back and it's in the negative because of the diesel credit that we expect from Region 19 throughout the year. Health services is typical for this time of year. Same thing with program 6. That's just the PD money in the balance. All of the utilities are encumbered. So you can see all the heating oil, electricity. There's If we stay within our budget, that's where we think we'd be. Operations and maintenance, again, is typical for this time of year. For the system-wide support, the school choice, where we pay for, and those subscription renewals, they're not encumbered yet. That's typical. That happens throughout the year. And then the biggest one here with the fringe is that any of our new staff has not been adjusted. So, once Donna has a breath, she'll go back in through, and now that our staff is settled, she'll adjust this number based upon if they took insurance for the person that's coming in new, or not. So that's the financial report. Questions about that?
Hang on, I can't see everybody. Okay, seeing no hands on the financial report, we will move along to the next is the grant funds report.
All right, so Donna and I met just to do a simple overview grants report for you. These are all the COVID grants only. You had asked to kind of get a sense of where they're at and what they look like. And so the COVID relief fund, that CRF grant, was $241,000. It's fully expended. It's already been audited. You can see the list of things there that we utilized it for. That utility staff was one of our kickoffs. There was ventilation repairs, some cleaning materials, some of those remote teaching things that we had to do where teachers needed document cameras, desk shields. The carports were out of this, and our tents are out of this. And honestly, the tents are something that we may consider looking at selling in the future, because they're just going to sit for now. It's the carports are great for what we have, and the air purifier. So this is fully audited, already done. Donna's already submitted that report to the state. ESSER 1 was the smaller grant, $60,000. This is where, when we kicked off, we needed additional administrative hours for planning. That was some summer hours, that's some weekend hours. We had some utility staff and benefits in there. And remember, these are over several years, a couple of these grants. So when you see utility staff salary and benefits multiple times, it was to keep them going. And then additional cleaning supplies. Again, that grant, ESSER 1, is fully expended and already audited, and we have all the backup for it. ESSER 2 and ESSER 2 state set aside. It's a double up, so we get both of these, the 257,000 and the 11,000. This is partially expended, so this is what we're utilizing this year to pay for the utility staff salary and benefits to get us through this year. We're using these funds to pay for tutors. We still have money in there for tutors. We'll continue to do that. We paid for the online subscriptions for Lexia and Newsela, however you want to say it, those online reading resources. Second step was paid out of this for SEL. We use this for iPads and for the carts for pre-K and 1, because they were needed for remote learning. Part of this funding was used to update our wireless infrastructure. The other part came out of E-rate funding. Seesaw, which is the elementary program that we were communicating with parents and posting lessons and things, and some cleaning supplies and PPE. This, I believe, has to be expended by, I think it's September of 23. And we are on, I think, Michelle, does that sound right to you?
That sounds right.
And we are fully on track to fully expend this with the things that we put in the grant. So it's not like there's extra dollars in there. Where it says partially expended, it just means it was budgeted over multiple years. And then the largest one was ARP ESSER. This is the last one that came in, $577,000. This is what was used to hire a director of curriculum instruction for the salary and benefits over 3 years. And obviously it's partially expended because we're only in year 2 of that. There's money in there for curriculum materials and updated curriculum. And again, this is connected to learning loss and improving instruction. There is additional staff hours to complete letters training. So if they can't do it within planning periods or the time we provide, we pay an hourly rate, contractual rate for them to complete letters. The PD that we've been doing, new staff that came in this year that didn't have letters year 1, we use this funding to get them caught up. So letters in our great schools partnership that work, a bunch of ventilation repairs and more air purifiers. So this grant too, there will be some adjustments in it, but it's It's going to be all expended in the same exact avenue, whether it's supplies directed to curriculum or the position or PD. But this grant was approved by the state already, and the only modifications we really make are adjusting some dollars up or down where things costs come in. So it's a high level overview of the COVID grants. I will tell you that the one grant Donna came in with a stack for ESSER 2. It was just the pile of backup was this thick. So we have it all, but it's just a high level overview for you in the public.
Thanks, Phil. I think often we hear about the federal money and thinking it's this cash cow that we can just tap whenever we need. And it's really helpful to see that we've been spending it all along, have spent most of it, and have already built plans into place for the rest of it. So thank you.
Yep. Can I
Are there
just add in,
questions?
Michelle? And
Yeah.
typically we can start considering and looking at the end of the year budget from 21, 22 at this time of year. I will tell you that we have of a staff of 4 in the financial office. We have 2 staff members that are new. And so, you know, Donna's trying to get the dust settled here. So the end of the year 21, 22 budget final will be in your next meeting. And because now all the COVID grants have already been reported on, and we have the 2 staff members that have settled, Donna will have time to do those things. So FYI.
We have to do some transfers between accounts at that point.
We'll look at it. We'll talk about it that day. And then you can also talk about if there's funds left in there that you want to request from the Board of Finance to go into your non-lapsing, that would be the time we would do that as well.
Okay, so expect more financial discussion next month.
Correct.
Okay. So we have new business, approved minutes of the August 9th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 9th, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Donna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Herb. Questions, issues with the minutes?
Yeah, there's one or two little things.
Okay,
Yeah, on in the minutes under the review of English language, I think it's E under the curriculum. There's a statement there. I don't have a copy of the minutes with me. My computer doesn't print. He remind everyone that this is the last set they are reviewing. In other words, does that refer to the English curriculum or
Yes.
and nothing else?
Correct. Just English language arts. Yep.
Okay. The other item is a couple of comments. 2 of the board members made comments at the last meeting, and this was paragraph 4 and 5. I don't know the exact section was E or F in the minutes, but it dealt with activists versus advocate. And when I think about it, I think of equality and equity and all the pronouns and everything, all the changes in terminology. And so I went to the dictionary, and an activist is one who believes and practices direct and exercise action, especially in politics.
Herb, we're focused on the content of the minutes. If you have a comment to make specifically about an issue, you could do that in board comments. Is there something wrong with what was covered in its accuracy for what I said?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful what we say.
Do the minutes represent what I said, or do the minutes inaccurately reflect the comment? You can't correct what I said. What I said, I said, and it's up there.
Well, it wasn't what you said. The minutes, as you know, are edited, and we're not putting down everything that people say. But I can do this under comments. If you
Yeah, I think that would be the correct place for it later in the meeting. Unless you think there's an inaccuracy in the minutes that you think needs to be corrected.
Well, that was my main purpose, but
Okay, so we'll include that at the end of the meeting for sure. Okay. Any other issues with the accuracy of the minutes in terms of whether or not they accurately reflect the discussion at the meeting? Okay, so seeing no further, let's move ahead on the vote. For all those in favor of approving the minutes of our August regular meeting, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so motion passes. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is an executive session. So in explaining that to folks who are on the call who may not understand that process, what we do is we put everyone who is on the Zoom call back into the waiting room so that the board can meet in executive session. We would have to have a motion to that effect and explain the purpose of the meeting, and if we need to invite the superintendent to join us. When that executive session is over, we would then bring everyone back into a main meeting with the rest of the board at that time.
So Michelle, I talked to this individual yesterday and they're not attending tonight, but I do have all the details of the request and it is still active. And they did say that they're comfortable allowing me to share those details. So I would suggest you vote to go into executive session and invite me.
Okay. Do I have a motion to that effect? Anne and then Tracy. Anne, you have to come off mute.
I move that we go into executive session and invite the superintendent.
You can say the reason. Yep.
Oh, to discuss
Emergency leave.
emergency leave request.
Tracy Anderson, I second that.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of moving into executive session for those purposes at this time, inviting the superintendent, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we will now move into executive session. Those of you in the waiting room, we will bring you back when we are completed with this section. Okay, so we have returned from executive session. Donna, if you want to come off.
9:21, sorry,
It is
9:21.
Thank you. It is 9:21. Donna,
Should I have put up the draft?
you can go ahead and make your motion now if you'd like.
I make a motion to approve emergency leave for Christine Kohlenbach through November 8th, 2022.
I second that motion. Oh, okay. We'll move right to a vote. So if you want to come off of mute, if we need to, that would be great. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye by raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes unanimously. So we will now move on to the next item on our agenda. We are moving into old business, which includes a COVID protocols update.
Thanks. So I met with the school nurses and the admin team to review our current protocols and the latest recommendations from Eastern Highlands Health District and the Connecticut Department of Health. That's where we get our recommendations from. I'll review the adjustments that are in this update, and they include the use of fans. And I'll just show you, we really shortened this to show, where we're at. This right here is a significant change. Portable fans may be utilized, but must avoid having fans blowing close to the breathing zone of any individuals and directly toward others inside the room. So basically, you can't sit directly next to a fan. We managed that. That language came from the state. And then this is the significant changes, the attendance protocols. And really the reason behind this was that the schools and parents had the challenges that we faced as far as making decisions for, when students could be in school if they had minor symptoms. We were quote unquote flagged by the state for absences last year. And they were all tied to COVID and when kids had to be out, and every district I'm sure was flagged for that. So we made a new spreadsheet, and that's really the significant change here is you remember that spreadsheet with the red, yellow, and the green. Let me just show you what the difference is and how it impacts attendance. Obviously, if you have a positive COVID test, yes, you have to be out for 5 days minimum from the onset of symptoms. Days 6 through 10, as long as you have improved symptoms and you don't have a fever, you can return to school, but you have to wear a mask on the bus and in school and all school activities. That's a straight recommendation from DPH. And they said, if you don't want to wear a mask, then you need to continue isolation through day 10. And then you can return after that. That's been consistent. So that's pretty consistent. Here's where the big change lies. If you have a mild respiratory symptoms and a COVID case in the household, you have to stay home until the symptoms resolve, and you have to provide a negative COVID test. So that is only when you have a case in the household. If you only have mild symptoms, but no fever and no case in the household, and they are mild symptoms, you can come to school. A COVID test is recommended. It is not required. Allergies are a prime example of this. You can retest we recommend that you retest if the symptoms persist. We encourage wearing a tight-fitting mask just in case you are positive and you're getting false negatives, but we're not going to require it. The laboratory tests would still be emailed to the school nurse. But again, with these right here, a test is not required, a mask is not required as long as the symptoms are mild. The bottom portion here has always been the case in our health protocols, in every district's health protocols. 100.4 is officially the definition of a fever. Anything from 100.4 on, you have to stay home. You can return to school 24 hours after the fever is broken without medicine, and you need a negative COVID test. Now, we had to give our nurses some wiggle room in this and make some recommendations. So a school nurse may use their professional discretion and require a COVID test after evaluating an individual's symptoms. If someone is sent to school and they're coughing up a storm, or they're constantly, their congestion is really terrible, the nurse can make the judgment there, which is their job as a medical nurse, to say, look, we believe that your child should have a negative COVID test. So, and that they're not mild symptoms at this point. So that's a conversation. This is the biggest change, and we're hoping it gets kids into school. I will tell you that in the last 2 days, we've piled up some cases in both buildings, and I will be sending a notification. We're looking at the potential for a small outbreak in certain classrooms at both schools. Even with that going on, this is the right move to try and keep kids in school, because there are other illnesses that kids had that they were being kept out of school because of COVID. So the biggest thing that I remind you of that in this is that I still have the authority to modify any of these protocols in consultation with Eastern Highlands and the Department of Public Health if things go south fast. So those are the two biggest changes in here, really about the new tree and mild respiratory symptoms and fans, because that was apparently a big deal. So questions, any questions, comments about the updated protocols?
Okay, I think we're running out of steam, so keep going, just a little more, guys.
You should vote on this if you're gonna approve the changes.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the COVID protocols as presented? Dan, you gotta come off mute.
I move that we accept the updated Willington Public Schools COVID protocols for the school year 2022-2023.
There's a second?
I'll
Laura?
second.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the protocols for the current school year signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay, we have to do a roll call vote then. I'm just going to go through everybody on my screen. So Anne, we'll start with you.
Yes,
Tracy? Oh, sorry, you got to come off mute. I don't know what that was.
Sorry, yes.
Herb?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Brianna?
Yes.
Donna?
Abstain.
And I vote yes. Okay, motion passes. Okay, dress code policy number 5132 under old business.
Sorry, I just lost it. I had to pull it back up. Sorry. So this policy was presented to the policy committee last year by HMS students. A group actually presented to the policy to the group, to our committee, to the board committee. Principal Tashanis worked with a group of students to modify the policy. And the committee went through the policy, and this is the board's first reading. The committee had one final question that they wanted to address, and I actually, to be honest with you, at the end of the year, I forgot about it, but we had answered it. And it was this question right here: how long should the shorts and pants and dresses skirts be? And it doesn't matter whether you're a male or female, they have to cover your buttocks. And so that was the way it was adjusted. We struggled about talking about fingertip length and all that business, different length arms. It's got to cover your bottom. That's the bottom line. So, and I would just say, I think they did a good job on this of addressing this from, the perspective of all students. And it's applicable. We can apply this policy to, and really, let's face it, the majority of this that we're talking about is middle school. And we can apply this to and it makes sense, and students were involved. So I don't know if there's any comments from the policy committee. I don't know that you need to have a lot of discussion about this tonight. You could just see it tonight and ask questions and then approve it next time. That's up to you.
Just a note for process, typically when policy comes before the board, there's a first reading and then we don't vote on it the first night to give the public a chance if they wanted to comment at the start of the next meeting. So for process, I would encourage us to follow that unless there's some urgency that we need to not follow that process. Okay. Laura, I see your hand, and then Donna.
Yeah, if you go down, and I don't think there's page numbers, after where you just had us, students may wear, it's in this section. And I just think it's, at least the way I'm reading it, it's written wrong. Hats, headgear provided, so students may wear hats, headgear provided that they do not obstruct the eyes. And then if you get rid of that middle piece, worn for religious reasons or cause a student to be unrecognizable. It sounds to me like students may wear something that causes them to be unrecognizable. And I don't think that's what you're meaning there. So I don't know, maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Okay. So we'll go back and look at that language. Thanks for calling our attention to that. Donna? You have to come off mute, Donna. There we go.
I had two things. One is in number 2, it says all students and staff should understand that they are responsible for managing their own personal distractions without regulating individual students' clothing or self-expression. To me, that's like a can of worms because, you see the cartoons where a squirrel runs by and dogs are distracted. If somebody is doing something to excessively draw attention to themselves and then they get unhappy because they're the center of attention, I think that that's a little bit of a problem. The other thing is I would like to add about the shorts, pants, dresses, and skirts completely covering their bottoms when they touch their toes, because people bend and things get seen that should be private. And I'm also curious on the next page, clothing that covers the torso with no open sides. It doesn't make reference to the fact that the neckline should be covering private parts also. I know it's a lot of verbiage, but it basically is keep your private parts private. Would probably cover the whole thing.
Yeah, Donna, the difficulty is when you're writing a policy is how implementable it is. So if you have very specific recommendations that you would make for changes to that language, I think that would be really helpful. Otherwise, we're just going to go around this 2 or 3 more times trying to get to the exact language. So if there's a piece that you have some specific changes to, if you would take a look at that and bring that to the next meeting for discussion.
I can definitely do that. The other thing, in the past, there's been issues with mom or dad or whoever puts student on the bus. Probably not in the kindergarten, but definitely with some of the older grades. And child arrives at school not wearing what they were wearing when they left the house. And people look the other way. I had a specific instance where there was a dress code for a school dance, and this was at EO. And I said something to the assistant principal, and I was told, well, they paid for the ticket. We can't tell them what not to wear. But they were not anywhere near compliance with what the school dress code was. So I think that if we implement something, it has to have a little bit of teeth and authority behind it so that the administration can enforce it.
Again, Donna, if you have something concrete that you would like to see added, that would be really helpful if you would bring some, we can certainly look at the issue as well, but if there's something in particular that you would like to see, it would really help if you brought it to the next meeting. I think that this is such a contentious issue around any particular issue on the dress code. There are going to be yays and nays on every single word that we pick and choose, so it's going to be easier if we can do this just once on each word and not multiple times on each different wording of the phrase. So if you come in with what you want, that'll be at least give us a place to start so that we can do this. And if it seems like there's too much, we'll have to make sure we have enough time on the agenda for the next meeting.
Fair enough.
Other questions about this particular policy? Okay, I thank the policy committee for their work on this. That's great. Our next item then is present to speak. I believe we have a handful of people who've stuck with us through the meeting. If you would be interested in taking advantage of this opportunity to speak to the Board of Education, now is that time at the end of the meeting. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you signify that you're interested in speaking by raising your hand or coming on the video screen and physically raising your hand so that we can recognize you and give you a moment. If you would please start with your name and address for the record, that would be great. And I was not quick enough to see who came up first. So Arthur Christensen, we're going to start with you since we did it the other way around at the start of the meeting.
Arthur Christensen, 14 Birch Meadow Lane. First, I just want to say, as somebody who completed level 1 Polish using Rosetta Stone, I think it's a fantastic program to teach people languages, specifically younger kids. It uses a lot of pictures, a lot of matching, a lot of word association. And I think it's actually a great program to teach our kids some languages. That being said, I am very disappointed that the 5th and 6th graders are still mandated to take Spanish. I think if they are allowed to take a language of their choosing, they would be more immersed and more interested in it. And I can speak from that from personal experience. As somebody who wanted to take Latin from 6th grade going forward and was forced to take Spanish, made me absolutely hate the language and hate the class. And as soon as I fulfilled my requirement in high school, I dropped it as quick as I could. And to this day, I've used about as much Spanish as I would have used Latin. So I'm kind of disappointed in hearing that. I do think kids who pick different languages would form groups with which to speak to each other and maybe develop closer friendships with people who have their same interests. So I think that having a wider variety of languages and not limiting it to 5, maybe limiting it to all those that are allowed in EO or taught in EO Smith would have been a better amendment. But that being said, I'm extremely disappointed that the conversation of paying for the aftercare for our kids kind of went nowhere. With only 28 kids that are signed up currently, that's only $1,680. And as I said at the beginning when I spoke, you do have a non-lapsing fund that you can take money out of to pay for things like this. There's no need to shift line items. And I understand Phil's point of this setting a bad precedent, but to be clear, this is not an after-school program. This is a program for when you have professional development only. This does not create a new precedent for after-school programs. If you're looking to continue this into next year, you could build it into the budget and still cover it for this year. I hope that gets looked at again in the next meeting, because I think that would be the fair thing to do for families, especially a point was made that it's cheaper than a babysitter, and that only furthers my point that the school really should be covering this. Thank you.
Mr. Teller, I believe your hand was up next.
Nick Teller, 49 Myrtle. Yeah, I think that's crazy that the school is making the parents pay for the after school care when they're the ones that are putting these professional development days during the school year when they should be during the summer. It blows my mind. And then, so unfortunately, planning and zoning put their meeting on the same time. So I was torn back and forth, but I did catch you guys were looking at the Rosetta and the cost of up to $60,000 between the program and having a teacher, and then one teacher for 5 languages and such. That whole idea just is Rosetta Stone. That whole concept on paper looks good, but having to spend $60,000 and one teacher that's going to take care of 5 languages, kind of crazy. Not sure if that ended up getting approved again. I was going back and forth, but I hope it wasn't. So.
Are there others on the call who would like to be recognized? This is your chance. Either come on screen so we can see you, or use the reactions button to raise your hand and let us know you'd like to come on screen. Okay, seeing no others, then we will move ahead with the board comment. And Herb, I had cut you off earlier. If you would like to start, I will give you the floor if you would like to start us off. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone just came on from iPhone. Might have been that you were taking a moment, especially from the phone, trying to find the screen. Can you come off of mute, or is that something you can do, Phil, to ask them to come off mute if they'd like to comment?
I think they can.
So the person who's raised their hand on the iPhone, we have to have you unmute your line so that we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, it's
There
Catherine.
you are. We can hear you now. Please start with your name and address.
Sure. It's Catherine Viveris, 121 Daleville School Road. Also SBC chair. I did notice you guys had postponed the item on the agenda for educational specs for obvious reasons. I just want to encourage the group to make this an important item and not delay it any further. I know you guys talked about setting up a meeting for discussion of this item. I just encourage you to expedite doing that. We do have a series of tasks that we have to do, and the ed specs is one of the items that we critically need to continue with our effort. So that's all I want to say. And thank you to everybody on the committee for all your efforts. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad we were able to figure out the technology and get you a chance to come on. So now we'll move on to board comments. So you can include any comments on her comments if you had that, and as a response or a question as part of board comments. I had recognized Herb. If you had wanted to start, Herb, you don't have to, but since I had cut you off on the topic, I wanted to give you the option if you wanted to start.
No, I'll start. Start of school is it's been very successful so far as I can see, and I certainly hope that it is a very productive year. We have a lot of items on the plate, no question about it. Phil, at some point, I'd like to have you give us some information on the curriculum and whether we're on schedule, how we're doing there. And also, I know it's early in the school year, but CIP for 2022, 2023, well, whether the items in that particular area are going to be implemented. Earlier, I spoke in regard to two terms, advocacy and activism, and I was cut off and asked to make comments during this, so I have at least 5 minutes. I know the
You
hour
have the
is
floor. That's why I recognized you first, Herb. This is the
late.
place for it.
I'm not going to go that long, but I did look it up in the dictionary, and I was interested because, you know, I hear these terms and I said, well, that doesn't seem right to me. And but adversity is displayed as a process of dialogue and friendly exchange or negotiations, that type of thing. Whereas activism is depicted as a mode of radical process. It's more radical, really involves direct acting, such as protesting and many other images, and sometimes it's depicted as violent. If you can just think of a negotiation meeting where you had 10 people around a round table, and they're negotiating in a friendly fashion and settling a contract or whatever. Or you can have a picture of someone of a group out in the street somewhere, yelling and screaming and trying to put over the information regarding their particular interests. So my opinion is that advocacy is working within the system to generate change, whereas an activist is working outside the system to generate change. But that was in the minutes, and it was thinking of getting rid of it, but I voted for it anyway.
Well, thank you for voting for the minutes, and thank you for your graciousness in moving this to the end of the meeting. I do recognize that you, of course, have every right to, continue that conversation if you wanted to do that here. Just that the accuracy of the minutes was the conversation at the time. So, was there anything else, or shall we move on to someone else?
I'm all set.
Okay. Who'd like to go next?
I will.
Tracy, go ahead.
I usually wait to the end and everybody says it all, so.
Here's your chance.
Just first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone back to the new school year. It seems to be, as far as I can tell, probably the most routine and normal, I guess, if you could say normal, school year we've had since COVID. So it's refreshing as an educator to be involved in that again. I appreciate the creative thinking and constructive conversations about the Rosetta Stone and our language program. I want to thank everyone, staff, administrators, custodians, MCOR, Novus, Public Works, and whoever was involved in cybersecurity for all of the efforts they made, especially to make it all happen before the first day of school. And appreciate the creative thinking for the speech and language situation, so that we can be meeting our providing the best program for our students that is required, but also we need to do anyway. Thank you.
Okay, Donna, I saw your hand go up next.
Thank you. Just a couple things. One is, at our last meeting, somebody requested that we go to a hybrid model. And I think that that would be prudent. So whatever we need to do at our next meeting to vote on that or have it on the agenda to discuss it. There was also somebody from the public who requested that we have this sex ed curriculum. And I think that in these times, it's important for parents to be able to see exactly what their kids are being taught. So I'd like to see that for our next meeting. In order not to end up in the news, I would like us to be provided with the vocabulary lists for the year, just so we have an idea of what things are. I don't know if you saw what happened in Southington. And then I'd also like to see us take another look at what we can do to fund the after-school program that is being used for during the teacher training time. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Go ahead, Laura.
Next. So first, I wanted to thank Superintendent Stevens and all of your admin staff for your creativity in these difficult times. The teacher shortage is a crisis, you know, being I'm still, you know, on the list of CT REAP as a certified science teacher, and I'm also at Eastern. And so I'm getting bombarded with emails from districts who are absolutely desperate for all teachers. You know, it used to be science and math, special ed, and world language, and now it's everybody. So I do appreciate very much the creativity and, you know, the problem solving that I am seeing going on here. I thoroughly enjoyed coming to the opening convocation. And I was smart enough to sit next to Herb. And so we were able to rack up the years of experience at our table. I knew immediately we would certainly win that prize. I would like to give a shout out to the drivers for starting a year with a bus down. I know that there have been delayed buses, but doing a great job. And the custodians, I know, always do an amazing job. And all this added difficulties with supply chains and things coming so late. Welcome the new, I feel like every month we have to welcome the new folks and say, you know, bon voyage to the ones who are leaving. That's unfortunate. What was the other thing? Oh, that might, well, I think that might be what I had there. I did want to, I'll push back a little bit, Herb, on this on this vocabulary. It is important to define your terms. And Michelle did say it means to her, and you looked in the dictionary and you found a different definition. Well, I just looked in the dictionary and found about 10 different definitions, one of which is the definition of an activist is someone who works to support a cause. Doesn't say anything about being outside the system, certainly doesn't say anything about being violent. When I think of activists, I actually think of peace activists. And then the other one, one who is conspicuously active in carrying out any occupational or professional functions, because I've always looked at myself as an activist for my students, also for education. So I agree with you. You know, we need to define our terms, but we need to make sure that some people don't kind of take over certain terms for their own purposes. Activists can be on both sides. You're absolutely right. They can be extremists, and they can be extremists on both ends of the political spectrum. But an activist can also be someone whose heart is in their work, and they actually take actions and do what they say rather than just talk about it and complain. So I had to mention that because I also feel that I am an activist for my students, for education, and trying to make the world a better place in my own small way, which is very small. But anyway, thank you all.
Brianna or Anne, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just wanted to take this opportunity to remind folks to please review proper cough and sneeze catching, because I am noticing in some very young students that they've been wearing masks so long, they don't remember or even know that they need to use their sneeze and cough catchers. So if you're a parent at home or you work with children in any way, you might want to remind them that they have that handy dandy elbow right there. And maybe that'll help a little bit with some of our germ passing. But welcome to a great year. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. And Ann is holding up her calendar, so she's got, can you come off mute? She wants to make sure we schedule this date for the school building committee to be able to move ahead. When is your next school building committee, Ann? Oh, sorry, you're on mute still.
Next Wednesday.
It's a week from
the 23rd.
tomorrow.
Right,
23rd.
and we, almost everything we're doing now is relying on the ed specs. So we really do need to get them finished up and passed over so we can continue our work. So when, want to start with Phil? Because I guess Phil.
September 19th. I'll give you a date.
Monday. Okay. Does that work for everybody else?
I have scholarship, but I can miss it for this, so.
What time is Scout? Could we work around it? And
Scholarship's at
Brianna, do you
7.
have- is it 7? Brianna, do you have gymnastics?
Not personally,
Yeah.
no. We have
For the
separate-
chauffeur. What would be a time that you could meet? I have a dance lesson to pick up at 5:45, but after that I'm free. So,
Don't worry about me. I'll make it work. Thank you, though.
okay.
Can people make
Anybody?
a 6:30 meeting?
If everyone else can make it, like I said, I mean, I make all the meetings. I can miss one. This is important.
So
Okay.
thoughts on like 6:30 to 8:30 on Monday, the 19th?
6:30 to 8:30 would work for me.
Okay.
Herb and Tracy, can you either give me a thumbs up or come off mute and say if that works for you?
Works
Monday,
for
the
me.
19th, 6:30 to 8:30.
Works for me.
Her?
No, you can either come off mute or give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, Herb, if you can't find the button. There you are.
This is the 19th.
Yeah, Monday the
Monday.
19th,
And what was the time again?
6:30 to 8:30.
Thursday, no, it's okay.
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 A
Thank you
question related to the content. Is it our intention that we think we're going to finish the ed specs? Or we're just going to finish a section of the conversation? I'm afraid we're still not going to meet the school building committee's needs, even if we meet for 2 hours on Monday. I don't think we're that close.
No, I can answer that question. We need to finalize square footage.
Okay.
Because if the square footage changes, that changes things. So, which I think we can do that night. And that'll be our target, but it's
Okay.
got to be about square footage and not as much maybe as what's in those spaces, if you know what I mean.
Got it. Okay. So that will be our goal for the meeting on Monday, and Phil will take care of noticing a special meeting for the Board of Education for that purpose. Okay, so
Thank you all for doing that. I really appreciate it.
anything else that you wanted to add, Ann?
Yeah.
No, I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna, did you have something else that came back up?
I just wanted to find out if we need any information that we should be looking over before that ed spec meeting. If Phil, if you could send it out, just so we have a little bit of time to refresh our memories of where things stand.
Yep, we'll make sure everybody can get an email tomorrow. Is there anybody that can't get an email now? Just,
Oh, I can't.
okay.
Brianna and Laura. Tracy? Are
I
you
can
with
on
us?
my phone. I just can't on my
You
laptop.
can't look at the ed specs on your phone. That would be
Yes.
abuse.
I need, it says something about administrator.
Yeah, no, but you
I'll
should have it
contact
set up for
someone.
2-factor authentication for your laptop or your computer, so you can see that.
So-
So Laura, Brianna, and Tracy.
Those are the only three.
Okay.
So
Could
once
you-
we, go ahead, Ann.
I'll call in tomorrow and talk to get someone to help too.
Okay. I'll add
Okay,
you
so
tomorrow.
Ann needs help too. Donna?
I can get stuff, but if it's a packet, could I just pick it up? Thank you.
We can print some stuff. Yep.
Okay. Thank you all for your participation. I know you serve on this board as a volunteer. None of us get paid for these long hours and the amount of dedication that goes into all of this work between meetings. But I do also want to thank the paid staff who made everything happen to get school started. Just because they're not volunteers doesn't mean they don't add in a lot of volunteer hours for which are unpaid. And given the amount of work that was done to start off the school year, even our vendors such as MCOR or Novus or some of those other contractors also have a great relationship with us and go above and beyond to make things happen to start off the school year right. So thank you to everyone in the school community, including the parents and the kids, because, you know, let's face it, they're doing the heavy lift every day. So we're ready to move off of this meeting. I will see you all on Monday, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, and we are so adjourned. Okay, thank you all.
I go.
Bye, everyone.